Aloha and welcome to the Outrigger Waikiki, where we're back with another episode of Surfers in Residence. My name is Marco. I'll be your host today in for Tabby Moniz. And big mahalo to everyone for the opportunity to sit down today and talk with legendary surfer and waterman Rob Machado. Welcome.
Good day.
Good day, yeah. Good forecast, too.
I know. There's pumping swell right now.
Yeah. Now, you talked about a baseball game, but are you going to get in the water?
I am. I went to the game last night. U of H won, I think, 11-2.
Okay.
It was a good game. It was a great game for us.
Sounds good.
Right? And, after this, I'm going to paddle out, ride some waves.
Good. Might see you out there then.
It's crazy because I keep looking out because I'm always just reminiscing.
Mm-hmm.
My dad brought me here, I think when I was 11 or 12.
Okay.
And this was the first trip I took to Hawaii.
All right.
And I stayed right up the beach here and surfed out here.
That's
surfed canoes. This was like the first time I surfed in Hawaii was right here.
It's amazing how many guests we've had, surf legends, who, just like surfing itself, talk about this beach in particular and its effect and their first experience. And some grew up on this beach, some like waiting to get to this beach. It's just amazing. And it's a wonderful distraction while we chat.
Yeah, it is. and my son is fired up. He's
got his fish, I saw.
He's got his little fish. He's ready to go. He went for a swim this morning, and he hasn't ever. I've tandem surfed with him like out at Lonnie's, but this will be his first like solo surf.
We're obviously going to be talking about you, but while we're talking about Jax, so was Dad pushing him into the family business, or is kind of giving him space to find it himself?
I've always followed the mantra of like, if you just, if they're surrounded by it, then it kind of just naturally happens.
Sure.
Which like naturally I'm going to go to the beach every day and I bring him and it's going to present itself. It's going to be there in front of him. His friends are going to do it. And
sure.
If you're at the beach, people are doing that.
Yeah.
And if you create it, or if you make it into a positive experience, right? Like just trying to get them out on good days when it's warm and,
that's a good idea.
Into good waves. And, like there isn't like, eventually they're going to get their beatings and they're going to learn. That's how you learn. But at the very early stages when they're young, like you want to kind of keep it really positive and
That's a good advice, because especially when you're young, if you have a really significant bad experience, that could with you could hold on to that for a while.
Oh yeah, he like my friend, when he was like 5 years old, my friend pushed him in this wave that like, it was a little whitewater, but it had like a double up behind it and it tripled up and he like cartwheeled, and it's the first thing he said to him. He's like, "Hey, Big Paul, you pushed me into that big triple up." Like it was like, oh my gosh, like he remembers that so vividly.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because that was one of those moments where he got probably pinned to the bottom and held down against his will, and there was some panic, and it created a little bit of fear.
Yeah,
but it's also a level of respect, right?
It is. One of my first ocean memories is that body surfing as a kid in Mexico, flipping over back on the beach, and just the hand of the ocean just pushing you down, and very quickly realizing that you can't fight it, and to totally kind of go limp, like relax. And it kind of turned into a life lesson that kind of works in a lot of situations outside of the ocean too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so 11 years old, you got to this beach, but where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Manly Hospital in Sydney, Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my parents were living over there at the time for about 15 years. And so that was where I spent like the first 4 years of my life.
Okay.
And then moved to Southern California.
Okay.
So that was kind of the majority of any sort of memories that I have. I don't really remember being in Australia, but still have an Aussie passport that I, carry around. But that's about it. And Southern California, Encinitas, Cardiff area.
Okay.
That was kind of where my love for the ocean began.
And at what age? When did you first? Who or what got you into surfing first?
So I remember being really scared of the ocean early on, but it must have been around 7 or 8 years old. I started body surfing and bodyboarding. I didn't surf until I was 10.
Okay.
About 10 years old, yeah.
About when you came out here?
Yeah. Oh, shortly thereafter, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now when did you start competing?
Probably when I was 11.
Okay.
I remember surfing my first contest.
Okay.
In the Menehune division, and And back then I think there was 3 kids in the contest because it was a rare thing that kids surfed under 12 years old.
Right.
Nowadays they have, divisions for 6 and under and 8 and under and 10
pro
and under,
at 12.
right? Yeah. It's like a whole different world now. So, back then there was just very few kids. It was hard to do when you're a kid.
Wow. That's totally not what I expected, just because now that's so not the norm.
Yeah.
And so did you enjoy the competition aspect of it, or did that kind of edge take a little while to come to you? Some people are very competitive by nature.
Yeah, no, I grew up in a competitive family. My mom and my dad played competitive tennis. I was playing competitive soccer before that, and baseball, and we were all in sports. My brother as well, playing baseball and football, and so there was constant activity around the house, right? We had a ping pong table in the garage where there was heavy grudge matches going down. That was kind of the staple.
Okay.
There was competitiveness was there. Once I started surfing and competing, it was kind of like, okay, I like this. I can do this. It presented its challenges. I was pretty fearful as a kid. And there's those days where you go to surf in a contest and the waves are big.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They're like, hey, here's a jersey. You're out there.
Right.
And
oh, you mean the parents don't care, not the waves don't care.
Or the competitor.
The organizers.
The contest people, they don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, send them out.
Right.
Yeah, we're here. We got our time.
And were your folks supportive, or were they trying to pick up, why don't you go tennis?
No, they were really supportive. Whatever route I was going to go. I was pretty heavily into soccer, and when I kind of shifted, they were like, cool. My dad was like, yeah, where's the contest? Let's go.
Right.
My dad actually ended up buying an old beat up motorhome because he got sick of standing on the beach all day. Surf contest, you get there at 7 a.m. and you're there till sundown waiting for the trophy presentation. He was like, man, I don't want to do this. So he got this old motorhome and he could just kick back in the motorhome, and we had a place to hide out. And
it's awesome.
He had this old little TV with this little antenna that he'd crank up on the roof,
Right. Okay.
So he was like, if I'm going to go, let's go. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Built a little clubhouse.
Yeah.
Right on. And so how long before you were sponsored then?
I got my first sponsor kind of 12, 13. It was
still young.
It was pretty young. It was a local shop, a local surf shop, and they were like, yeah. And they actually kind of hooked me up with, linked me up with Quicksilver.
Right.
And that was my first kind of main sponsor.
That's cool though. It was like a local, so Bad News Bear style,
totally.
Bees Plumbing on the back kind of thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, the local shop guys, they knew the rep, and they're like, hey, this kid's cool, and back then, they gave you some stickers, and I was allowed. I remember my first time going up to Quicksilver, and they were like, all right, kid, you get to pick 8 items. You walk through this giant warehouse full of stuff, and you're like, you got to pick 8 things. That was pretty hard.
Talking about a kid in a candy store. Now, does that include boards, or is that just T-shirt, sweater?
Oh no, just all trunks and shirts.
Right,
and,
right.
Yeah, so
I love it that there's a protocol.
The magic number.
8.
It's 8 things.
And so you're 13 now. You got a more national type sponsor, and you're touring. This is the thing that I find so fascinating with kids going pro surfing.
Yeah.
Because you don't really get that in other sports like boxing or this, other sports. So at that age, you're competing against adults, right? Touring with adults?
No, not at that point. So, well, not that long after, when I turned 14, I entered my first pro event.
Okay.
And that was when I surfed against, any guy that was on the California circuit, you know? And I remember surfing a heat against a guy named Alan Sarlo, who at the time was he looked like a grizzly bear.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
Massive, and he was just paddling past me, growling and grunting. And I was so scared of him, It's take any wave you want. I'll just sit off, I'll get out of his way. And his intimidation factor, it worked.
Right.
But that 14 was when I surfed in that first pro contest. And then I kind of, every year I would dabble, but most of the other time I was surfing in an amateur contest, kind of in my age bracket and kind of going through the ranks, being an amateur surfer.
Okay.
But by the time I was a senior in high school, I was competing full time like on a pro level.
Right.
Yeah.
And hindsight 2020, what's harder, being that kid competing against a lumberjack adult, or being the experienced adult competing against like youth?
Yeah. That's a great question. I know. That's a scary one, right?
Yeah, because kids are scary.
They are, man.
They're resilient.
They're pushing the boundaries and pushing the envelope, and they're the ones they're the future, right?
Right.
And like Bob Hurley always told me, that's the youth is the future.
Right.
I always watch what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, as you get older, it's like they're gonna lead the way.
Did you pull any of those intimidation tactics out?
No,
growl at anyone?
That was never my style necessarily. But
a growler.
No, it was just go out and do my thing. I kind of had to figure out how to compete and just do it the way I do it, just and trust it.
And so once you started really getting on the tour, because you're on tour for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So like how did you take to that? Because you at one point described it as like the traveling circus. I couldn't tell if that was a compliment or a criticism.
Yeah, well, it is, man. It's crazy because people trip out even today, you know, like I tell them how the tour worked. And it was like they just slid you a piece of paper that had all the events, and they were all over the world, from Australia, Japan, you know, South Africa, you know, I mean, you name it, right? Europe, and they'd be like, oh, so did they organize your travel and set you guys up with hotels and rental cars and stuff? It was like, no, none of that.
Right.
You did it all yourself.
Right.
So it's like you learned really fast how to become your own travel agent. Yeah. And we had guys helping us like book flights and stuff, but you had to find places to stay. I mean, just alone, like I laugh now when we go places and you just pull out your phone and punch in an address and directions. Like getting to the beaches where we had to go was like we got so lost, and it took pulling into gas stations and finding someone that speaks English, and you know, there was such a more of a adventure to it than just everything being at your fingertips.
And even just money.
Yeah.
Now you have credit cards or phone or your watch or whatever like that. I remember traveling as a kid and my father like having like, you know, traveler's checks and hidden money everywhere because that was all your traveling money.
Traveler's checks. Yeah. Totally. All the time. You had to find the banks that would take them. Yeah. You know, you're in Europe now. Oh, we don't take those. You have to go to find a special bank, and they're only open, you know, all those little things, all those little details, man. It just makes me smile. And it's just stuff that, like, I don't know, kind of molds you as a human. And
were you paying for a lot of that out of pocket, hoping to win it back in prize money?
Yeah. Like it was kind of negotiated into contracts. You kind of gauged, like you were like, oh, it's going to cost me about 30 grand to do the tour. Right. Okay. Like all my airfares, all my rental cars and hotels, like 30 grand should cover me. Like now it's probably double that. But and then it's like, am I going to travel with people and share expenses, and you know, like, or do I want to do it alone? It's like, do you want to be sharing a room with the guy that you might be surfing the heat against?
I didn't even think of that.
Right. And that happened plenty of times.
Go from dad's camper to sleeping with the enemy.
Right. So, yeah, you kind of factored it into your contracts. So it was kind of covered, and then you just paid for it yourself. And so it's just life lessons, man.
So interesting how so much has changed. And was there a moment that all of a sudden you realized you were being seen as a role model to other people younger than you? Kind of happened gradually, or like was there a win where you're like all of a sudden you felt it, a different shift?
It did happen very gradually. But I think it really hit me when I, you know, after being on tour for 10 years, it was almost like I didn't exist. Like home life didn't exist. I averaged being on the road like 10 months out of the year. Wow. So I would just go and stay places and travel, and I wouldn't come home all the time. Yeah. And so after doing that for like 10 years, coming home, and there was, you know, people weren't watching events online. There was no online. Right. Like they would only see what came out in a magazine or, you know, so it's like after 10 years of doing that and then coming home, it was like people were like, wow, man, like we've been following you. And like, I was like, I had this realization that like, oh, wow, like I have, you know, this presence in my community that I can use in a positive way.
And it took a lot more energy to follow somebody buying all those magazines. You had to find this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Not just it.
It wasn't right there. It wasn't available. It wasn't right. It was, yeah, you had to really dig and follow to figure out what was going on in the world.
Right.
And
as someone who won pipe masters and had, I heard posters of pipe on your wall as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So who were some of your go-tos? Who's your inspiration?
I mean, I had two.
Or the wave itself?
Yeah, two images that stood out immensely to me was one of Jerry Lopez. This is in my bedroom wall, and one of Ronnie Burns. That I just remember looking at them every single day and going like I said, I was scared of bigger waves, and I just thought I'll never surf a wave like that. That was in my head. And then fast forward however many years and seeing a photo of myself on a wave that looked like a wave similar to those pictures. I thought, holy shoot, man!
Nice
actually,
your kids are here. Nice seeing that.
Holy crud, man! I'm actually riding a wave that was on my wall.
And that's you looking at the picture of yourself, but you dropping in that. Did you ever really lose that fear of that big waves are scary? Did you ever change your relationship to that big wave?
Yeah, it changed. It was more learning how to control it. There's a fine line between fear and panic, right?
True.
And fear's healthy. It's okay to be scared. You should be. The ocean is the greatest. And you should always have that level of respect, and especially in Hawaii, right? Yeah. It's there's so much power, and so that was never lost. It was more just understanding where my line was, where the fear turned into some sort of panic, because when that happens, then things spiral really quickly, and so I had to build up to it. It took me years and years of just spending time in the water and just paddling out a pipe every day, no matter what, if it was 2 foot or if it's 10 foot. And if I didn't even catch a wave, just going out there and just being amongst it and watching the guys out there, watching, I was lucky enough to surf out there with, Johnny Boy and Derek and Mike Ho and the legends. There was an intense pecking order out there.
I would imagine.
So it was for a skinny Howley to paddle out. I was way over there. I was at gums, basically, just kind of watching and waiting my turn to pick off a couple scraps.
And would you consider that to be your training? It sounds like some of that sounds like mental training almost.
Oh, yeah.
Like any other yoga or the gym, or it's just the train to surf, you surf.
Yeah.
Train, you want to get over a fear, you face it. Or were there any other tricks you were playing around with?
There wasn't, man. We weren't tuned into that. We weren't, nobody was training.
Right.
We weren't really working out outside of the water. I was raised on, my mom was a vegetarian, so eating healthy was kind of a priority for me.
Okay.
And I think we all kind of ate healthy, our generation. We just surfed.
Right.
And dealing with that whole fear side of it, I had to just kind of immerse myself in it.
Right.
And I remember coming to Hawaii, around Halloween, and I would stay through Christmas and all the way to the end of January.
Right.
As long as I could. I just wanted more time, because that just meant for me putting myself in situations that scared me and how I dealt with it, and then that kind of gave me confidence to go into other situations. And I was fortunate enough to be with the Momentum generation, and we had guys like Todd Chesser and Brock Little, who were our mentors. And when those guys walked up and said, "Hey, let's go surf," you were okay. You didn't say no.
Yeah.
And their job was to kind of put you in these precarious situations that that didn't scare them, but it's going to scare the crap out of you, right?
Yeah.
So lucky to have guys like that in my life.
Oh.
And then all of my peers, I had Kelly and Shane and Ross and, the whole tribe. There was just such a crazy crew of guys.
Well, and the cool thing with that is that it doesn't seem like then your method has to change over years as you get older. Some people to have a very strict diet or a workout regimen, and then it has to evolve with them. This is just kind of a very practical experience method.
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
So what about now changing from just surfing into, tell me about winning Waterman of the Year. That's got to be a nice feather in your cap.
It is. It was, man. It kind of caught me off guard. You know, I don't know. It just
doesn't seem like something that happens accidentally.
It just feels like you just go about doing what you do and every day, and to be, you know, given an award like that was such a high honor to me. You know, those are big words.
They are,
right. And I just felt like, wow, I feel young. I feel like maybe I'm not worthy for this. I haven't like accomplished enough to do this. You know, I think of guys like Jerry and guys on that level. You know, so it was a huge honor. And actually, I had Jerry kind of present the award. They asked me who I would like to have present the award.
So you got the poster to come down from the wall in real life.
It was wild. It was a really special night. Yeah.
And when you say you were so young, I guess for a waterman, because you had already been out of the competitive tour of surfing for some time, right? How would you like kind of maybe spiritually describe the difference, right? Because one is it's very different, waterman compared to, see, the other one seems like strict athleticism almost.
Yeah, you know, like that word, just the word waterman, you know, like I just don't, I feel like I surf, you know, like I look at all these guys that are so multifaceted, you know, across, you know, so many different avenues of being in the water, whether it's diving and sailing, like anything that involves water.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like,
any comes to mind.
Yeah, I'm just dipping my toe in the water, really, you know? Like when you look at some of these other guys nowadays, I'm like, dang, man, like I got a lot of catching up to do.
Right.
But it's all in good spirit, you know? Like it's amazing.
You're in good company, that's for sure.
Totally. I feel blessed. Yeah.
How special that Lopez got to give it to you.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about another term then. Okay, so from surfing to waterman to soul surfer, free surfer. What's your distinction there?
I was pretty lucky, you know. It happened for me at a time in my life where it was just everything kind of lined up really well. You know, I was looking for a new sponsor. I'd just fallen off tour. It was 2001, so where I was going into 2002, and I had two deals on the table. One was with OP, and OP was all about me going back on tour and being, you know, like trying to win a world title. You know, it was all incentive based. And then I had Bob Hurley, and Bob Hurley said, "Hey, you know, we'll pay you this, and we just want you to go surfing." And I was like, I was so confused. I did the same thing. I kind of like put my hands up. I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, I just want you to wake up every day and go surfing. Like just the power of that, and you going and being in the water and being around people. He's like, I've seen it, and there's something very unique and special about that, and I recognize that, and I just believe that if we do this together, then we're gonna do some really special things.
Fairy godmother.
It was like, what is happening right now?
What forward thinking though? That's because now when you see with all the content creation and people can make a living, not competing, but then that was there. Were you really one of the first of the kind of going that route? I mean, I'm trying to think of who else might have been at that time.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Curran before me.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of guys that maybe were very ultra competitive on the world tour. There was definitely some free surfers that had made kind of a living being a free surfer.
Yeah.
But guys that had been like, you know, on the world tour for an extended amount of time and then kind of transition. I wasn't even 30, I think.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so considering, you know, like you look at Kelly, he's 52, still competing at the highest level, right? It's like, like it could have been like in my prime, like in my like early 30, like late 20s, early 30s. It's like I was kind of just maybe hitting my stride and like figuring things out. And so to be able to, you know, it took me a few years to really kind of cut the cord. I still competed in a few events here and there, but then eventually I kind of cut the cord and just said, that's it.
So you had Hurley who was willing to support this, because I'm trying to think of, okay, I remember, you know, browsing around video stores for like extreme sport tapes of like skating and surfing and some crazy ski stuff.
Right.
But you needed film crews, you know, it wasn't like now where you can create your own content. So that was really what afforded you the
Yeah.
the luxury of transitioning over.
We actually set out. I went to Bali and I linked up with Taylor Steele, and we
Awesome. I want to talk about this.
yeah, and Taylor came up with the idea. He said, let's make a movie.
Mhm.
You know, you should come live here in Bali, and you should just chase waves all over Bali, and we'll put together a little film crew. And Bob was like the first one. He's like, I'm in.
Right.
What do you guys need from our end? You know, and
Right.
he just jumped right in and supported the whole project. And so I basically lived in Indonesia for a year, and we just chased swells all over the place and filmed and made The Drifter.
Yeah.
And another movie called Malali. It was kind of the follow-up to The Drifter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that one, but I want to talk because they're so different. There's Drifting and The Drifter, the
Right.
two.
Yeah.
They're about 10 years apart, maybe, something about that. They couldn't be more different from what my feeling of the intent of the film was to you and how you were in in each of the films.
Right.
And you think of a movie with a very similar title, similar subject, same actor, or athlete, totally different. I mean, so Drifting seemed like, okay, we just want the most radical surf footage we can find.
Yeah.
But Drifter is like a cultural exploration or something. So what was the motivation for that? Because I heard you wrote a lot of it.
It was, man. I was in an interesting place in my life. I was going through a divorce, and like life was just kind of turned upside down. I wasn't on tour anymore, so there was like this, who am I kind of thing, right? And it was like, go live in a tent in Bali and, you know, kind of
Back to Bali.
Yeah. Well, that was to make The Drifter, right?
Oh, first one, okay.
Yeah. Drifting was...
That's what I was thinking of, Drifting
No.
versus Drifter.
No,
Okay.
Drifting was in the height of competitiveness,
Yeah,
intense,
yeah.
high performance, like, you know, go big. And,
Yeah, it's just...
yeah, it's intense.
Yeah,
you know?
it is. Even the soundtrack is all...
Soundtrack is
all,
intense,
yeah.
yeah. That was a totally different vibe than The Drifter, yeah. The Drifter was definitely a different part of my life and a great, amazing part.
It seemed like beyond how the surfing changed for you, it seemed like just even the nature of traveling changed for you.
Yeah.
Versus the tour, because in Drifter, it seemed like the traveling didn't seem like a grind. It seemed like an escape. It seemed like
Oh, yeah. Well, let's
like
think
a mute button.
like we referred to it as the traveling circus
Yeah.
a minute ago. So we used to have 44 guys on tour, and then you can probably tack on another few guys that are just traveling. So let's just say there's 50 to 60 guys that are on the level of being a pro surfer.
Right.
And so you pull up to a spot, and there could be 50 guys out that surf that good.
Right.
The best surfers in the world, right? And then you've got camera guys and photographers and judges and, you know, and then people that just want to be around the event, right? So it was like, dude, it was so hard to escape that chaos. Like, to get away from that, you had to kind of submerge yourself in it at times to be competitive and like enter into it, but then to break away and to be removed was very challenging. Everywhere you went, you go get on a flight to fly to the next event, and there's dudes everywhere, and everyone's renting cars and staying in the same hotels. It's like, you're just moving forward to like The Drifter. Like, that part of my life was like, I can go on a trip with whoever I want, as many people or as few people as I want, and I can choose who I want to shoot it and go to a place that I want to go.
Right.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like
And stay as long as you want. You don't have to leave and catch the next contest.
completely flipped upside down.
Right.
Right? So you start like spinning that around in your head, and it's like, dang, okay, I can get used to this, you know, and like, I can really embrace this.
I love that scene where you're like, oh, I'm going home. And the guy's like, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you're like, nah, I guess I'm not going home just yet. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for Cow Beach.
It was a good reminder, you know, like, it was funny because in the movie, we had to recreate a lot of things. There was a part in there where I'm sleeping out, and this really happened. I was sleeping out I was in Sumba, and I was out in this like field, and this guy from the local village just showed up, and he just was hanging out. He didn't speak any English, and sat down next to my fire, and we were just, finally I just crawled in my tent and went to sleep, and he slept outside my tent.
Right.
And this is like one of the most intense malaria infested areas.
Oh.
And he just slept outside my tent. I woke up in the morning and he left, and then all the kids from the village came back. He stayed there to protect me.
Yeah. So
from what I heard, but so those were things where like the crew wasn't with me. I was by myself.
right.
And they'd come back the next day, and I'd be like, you guys have no idea what happened. Like, it was the most awkward moment, like sitting around a fire with this guy from Sumba and just like trying to communicate.
It was awkward, and it was definitely a little strange, but also there was something really kind of beautiful about it that, like, I guess the tribal leaders were like, someone's got to watch this guy. Someone's got to own him for the night.
There's
sort of thing.
There's a skinny alley sleeping on the hill over there. Like,
it'd be real bad for tourism if he gets mauled by a rhino or something,
I could just see them all like rock, paper, scissors. Like, who's going to go over there?
Damn.
Oh, man. Johnny, you lost, dude. You got to go sleep.
If he did lose, he had a good disposition about it. He seemed cool.
Yeah, it was good.
So 180-degree pivot, then you do Surf's Up, and you get to play yourself as an animated character.
Yeah.
So what's that
awesome.
like?
No, that was the best.
Yeah.
We had such a good time. It was myself and Sal Salema and Mr. Kelly Slater. And we did a lot of the voiceover work together. We were all in the room together. And
you did? Okay.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff where we just had a lot of banter between us. It was weird. And then they would just pull stuff out of these conversations. They would feed us topics, and we would just go, and we'd riff off things. And they just wanted us naturally speaking, like how we normally talk, rather than scripting us. And then they would go in and pull stuff out and create a script. And sometimes we'd have to go back in and re-say things. So on and so forth. But anyway, the whole project was so cool, and to see that all come to life and be involved with Jeff Bridges and like
crazy,
like in an event, like at events, and like the opening, John Heater, Chicken Joe, the best, Napoleon Dynamite, like legends.
Yeah,
right,
right. Well, we're talking about from Jerry Lopez to Napoleon Dynamite. Right? I love it. Well, you really made it when they make a cartoon character after you, right?
I know. My kid, he still like trips out. I'm like, I try to make him watch it, and he's like, I don't want to watch Surf's Up. I'm like, come on, man. But I'm in it. Like, don't want to watch it? And he's like, no, Dad.
So is that a challenge? Because I've heard that so much from the musicians that I've worked with, trying to impress your children.
Yeah. Oh, he's not impressed.
They're the toughest critics. Right?
Not impressed at all. No. He could care less.
And now, what about all of these?
Are you kidding? I'm the one that's got to make him do his math homework. And,
that's right. Yeah, you're a drag.
Come on, man.
I don't know. You probably got him that fish he's holding.
Yeah. No, I made that for him, yeah.
You made that? All right. Yeah. Well, so Dad's got a couple tricks up his sleeve. So let's say, talk about tricks up your sleeve. All these movies have really cool music, and I know that you did some of the music for, definitely Drifting, right?
Yeah.
I saw Sack Lunch listed in the credits. So what's your instrument? It did not say.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to research it to be all cool.
Okay, I play guitar, yeah.
All right.
I've kind of played guitar most of my life. I started when I was like 12, and it just kind of, fell in love with it. And then, my friends had a punk band, and I was just like, in the 90s, like, it's just like everyone had a punk band. It's like, cool, let me join the band.
Yeah.
We became Sack Lunch. We toured with Blink-182 and
really?
Unwritten Law. Like, oh, yeah. Because Pennywise, like they would play all the opening gigs
on my CBs.
Yeah, there you go. They would play all of Taylor Steele's movie premieres.
Yeah,
it was Unwritten Law, Blink-182, Pennywise, Sprung Monkey, and Sack Lunch. We'd always kind of weasel our way in there somehow, and we'd play a couple shows. So.
Sort of the soundtrack to all the to skate.
Yeah,
VHSs, to all the ski bomb, all that. Tell me more about the music surf combo, because it's obviously I read a couple thoughts that you had about this connection. So we'll hear it from the horse's mouth. What do you see the connection as? Because you got Jack Johnson, Tom Curran, Frank Ryder, Kelly Slater was in the Surfers with you, right?
Yeah.
What does he play?
Yeah, I mean, Kelly's an amazing guitar player, singer.
Okay.
He's really talented.
So what's the overlap between these?
Yeah, there's so many crossovers. It's wild. There's no rule book to surfing, right? I mean, unless you're on tour, but for the average person, that's just going out in the ocean, there's no real criteria of how you're supposed to do it on what board and kind of rules that you're supposed to follow, right? And it's the same. And you can be inspired by Tom Curran, by Jerry Lopez, by, you know, whoever it is. But you're never going to surf exactly like them.
Right.
Right? You can say, oh, I want to surf like him and try to surf like him, but you never actually will.
You're going to absorb it and it's going to come out.
It's going to come out the way that it comes out of you. And it's the same with music. Like, you can say, like, I love Jimi Hendrix and I want to play like Jimi Hendrix, but good luck.
Yeah.
Dude, good luck, you know? Like, and you try to mimic sounds that other people have created, and, like, it really comes out in your own way. And that's what's kind of unique. There's no rules about that. Yeah. And it's weird that it's a guitar. There's only so many possibilities. Right. And it's amazing what people do with it.
Yeah, you said one thing that I liked was that you'd think that by now, because surfing's thousands of years, good, you know, music, a couple thousand years, you'd think that everything that could be done would already be done by now. Yeah. You know, and then you have someone like Van Halen who's also like, oh, no, I'm going to play it this way.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Nowadays with YouTube and all that other stuff, like, it's like what you see, what people are doing with instruments, with guitars and surfing as well. Like, there's so many kids going in so many different directions and pushing the limits in so many different ways. And you're just like, man, hats off to you guys.
I didn't see foils coming.
Yeah, right? It's so wild. So much going on.
Yeah. And so this is another quote that I thought was interesting. You said something that surfing can be very selfish and you wanted to make sure you gave something back. Yeah. So what was the selfishness about surfing? Because I always hear about the spirituality.
Well, I think when I said that, I was probably speaking about being a competitive, a tour surfer. Okay. I think, to be successful on tour, you had to be extremely selfish. You really had to put yourself first. You know, it was like, I'm going to this event and then I need to, arrive. Like I said, we're planning all this stuff ourselves. It's like rental car, hotel, like, I need to know when I'm going to surf, like, where am I going to surf? When am I going to practice? Like, what am I eating? Like, you didn't have people cooking for you or doing anything. It was like, you were doing all these things and you really had to set yourself up for success to really be able to get to that place when you put a jersey on and actually go out to compete, that you're, like, in a good headspace.
There's all this profession to do.
There's there's just normal life stuff that you got to, like, get through, right? It's like the traveling, and if you're traveling with a family and, like, navigating all these different things in life to get there and get to a place where you're relaxed and okay and in a good headspace where you feel confident and you can go out and surf. Right. And it was, you had to be,
which is such a fraction of the whole process. Yeah.
And it's just like, this is what I need. This is what I need to do. Like,
there's the selfish.
Right. It's like, I need to do this right now. I need to do that. I need to do this. I need to do that. So, it was, it sounds kind of weird, but
no, when you explain it like that, it makes sense, because if I don't do this, it all seems like flexible. Well, you're going to eat what you're going to eat, or we're going to get to bed when you get to bed. But in order to perform at that level, you have to hit these markers. Yeah,
you try to. And now I get it. Why these guys on tour now, like, have, a little tribe going with them. Yeah, they're kind of taking the weight off of these guys, so they can just focus. My dad did that for my first year on tour. He traveled with me. I couldn't rent a car. I couldn't, like book a hotel room. Like, he was just like, cool, I'll go with you to every event. Right. I'll get you there, and I'll get you to the beach where you need to compete, and then from there on, you're on your own. Like, I'm not your coach. Right. I'm not gonna, if you want my advice, I'll answer questions, but I'm not gonna be that guy. I'm just gonna do all these other things and take them off your plate. Right, which was huge.
It's no little thing, yeah.
And, like, as a kid, being your first year on tour, like, that was massive. Mm-hmm. For me to have someone that just took all those things away from my mind, that I could just show up and compete. Like, I was in my first year on tour, I came in Hawaii with a mathematical chance of winning the world title. Right. Like, I had a very successful first year on tour because of that. Right. Right.
You had setting yourself up to win, you had a good foundation there. I'm guessing one of the ways in which that selfishness that you wanted to make sure to give back was the Rob Machado Foundation, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing, unless it's a foundation dedicated to selfishness.
No. Well, I think, like, and going back to what we talked about earlier, when I came back from doing the tour and I came home and I realized that, I had a presence in my community and I had a voice. Yep. And that people were kind of, almost looking to me like, okay, now what?
Right.
And that was kind of the perfect platform for me to like say, oh, wow, okay, let's do something positive, and created the foundation in 2004. And it was really vague at the time. We just said, we're going to do environmental education. In 2004, that was kind of like, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
And it was really, like we went to my elementary school, and it was like, I was taking my daughter there to like start school, and I was like, wow, you guys don't recycle anything.
Right.
So we created a recycling program for the school, a lunch cart where they could recycle plastics and paper and really kind of like put everything in different places, and then we started a gardening program, and then we started a water program, and
They had the same water fountains.
Yeah. I remember walking up to the water fountain and laughing and going like, the kids were giving me a tour of the school, and I was laughing, going, hey, you guys, this is where I used to drink out of this drinking fountain. This is so cool.
Same one.
And they looked at me like I had three eyes, they're like, you drank out of that?
Right.
Because this was like prime time where every kid, I kid you not, you looked around at every kid's backpack and they all had a single-use plastic water bottle.
Right.
Every single one of them. That was like prime. When we were all brainwashed into thinking like, you just had a block of those things at your house and you just grabbed one every day out, walked out the door.
Sure.
Right? So, and they looked at me like, nobody drinks out of that thing. It's disgusting.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. And then it was like the wheels started turning, and it took a few years to really kind of, because, refill stations didn't really exist then either. Like, how do you create a drinking fountain that kids will be stoked on?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we need to make a refill station, and reusable water bottles were just starting to come into our world then too. And it was like this whole new thing of like, okay, it all started happening. And as it happened, we were kind of on the forefront of that. And so we've been putting refill stations, distributing water bottles to kids.
It's so savvy to go to the kid. I mean, that's what the tobacco companies, right? Go to the kids, But to do something positive and go to the kids and get them while they're young, kind of
totally
teach them some new things.
And we started on an elementary school level, and then you go up to the high school level, and it's all vending machines now.
Yeah.
Kids.
My high school was all soda machine. It was all soda.
Yeah. And if you want water, you're paying $3.50 for a bottle of plastic water.
Right. Right.
And it's just like, kids don't have access to free water. That is the craziest thought to me.
So that is sad when you think
in school.
Yeah.
In school.
Like, wow.
It sounds crazy.
It doesn't sound real, but it's true.
So yeah, the goal being like, let's eliminate, single-use plastics from campuses.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty simple thought.
Yeah.
And have every kid has a reusable bottle, and there's refill stations.
And it's like anything else. When you start looking at the real math, one school, well, how many schools are there across the country?
Yeah.
How many kids need school? Yeah. All of a sudden, you're realizing these are very big numbers. You know,
yeah, huge.
Then you're making a big effect.
Well, and it's not something that I'm trying to just like own and have it be mine.
There's a bunch of like, what is there? Flow water, hydration.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we're all in this together. It's hopefully inspiring people. It's like you just said, the numbers are so huge. I can't do that on my own.
No.
It's like, I hope people see what I'm doing and go do that, in their state, in their county, in their city, and, like inspire other people's, and it just grows.
Yeah.
Like it just
goes. Each kid becomes a little ambassador. I love you.
Yeah.
Like where the kids go home and be like, yo, to parents.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. When your kid calls you out, you're just like, wow, that stings.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, my sister's kids went vegan, not because they were sensitive to animals' needs or for even health reasons, but for environmental. And I was like, well, I love your choice. I didn't even think of it that way.
Right.
I thought that was really cool that my 10-year-old niece is telling me why not to do, And I loved her reasoning. I'm like, you are making a lot of sense, young lady. So then the next one is, so when COVID gave the whole world a timeout, some people doubled down and trained harder or wrote more songs or whatever. Some people finally took a break. So what did you find yourself doing during this global timeout?
I embraced being at home, surrounded by family, making a lot of surfboards, shaping, and just embracing, like you said, like everybody disappeared.
Yeah.
And places were empty, and and riding down the street with no one around, and just like really kind of appreciating that. And kind of just get like kind of it was a good reset, just in life in general, family and priorities, and really kind of just like, okay, cool, like this is the world's way of kind of slowing us down.
Yeah,
hopefully.
And how much is that stuck? Like, what's the routine? What's your routine look like these days?
It's crazy because I feel like we kind of get sucked back into our old ways pretty quick. But like, hey, we're just grateful. We had a little store that we were able to keep open, and we made a lot of surfboards during that time, and we kept our glass shop open, and those are families that we kept. We supported, and employed, and that was super important to us, and so there's a lot of loyalty there, and we have just good people that we work with, and it's like it just made your level of appreciation for people and for what we have like that much more.
And so, are you still ride the same break that you did in high school?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I still drive down to my little spot. And paddle out there and surf almost every day. Try to, yeah.
And what are you riding now?
Oh man,
what
dude,
do you have these days?
I have too many surfboards in my quiver. Yeah,
I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, anything from like a little 5-foot fish up to like 9, 10, 11-foot gliders and everything in between. I'm constantly just dabbling and tweaking and making things different and new.
Well, when you shape, it must be like almost
never ends.
Yeah, like a compulsion, right?
It's like even if a board works super good, you're like, but could I make it better?
Okay,
like,
so
what could I do to make it? What if I did this or did that? It's wild.
So this is directly related to that because it was a quote of yours, and it was like one of these like truth bombs that you didn't explain. So I'm gonna try to pick your brain about it a little more because it's sort of about that compulsion vibe, okay? So you in Drifter, it was because there's Drifter.
Yeah.
You said, we dream of the perfect wave, a perfect place, and as soon as we get there, we dream of something else.
Yeah.
And I totally find myself succumbing to the same human trait.
Right.
That once you had the pipe on the, the poster of pipe on the wall, and then you win. Like, do you take the poster down or, Weird. So is this, but what I don't see is this human trait, is this a plus or a minus? Is this like kind of beautiful or is it kind of tragic?
Well, I think the whole point, of that movie was like, like I'm going to go out into the middle of nowhere and camp and like rethink my life and like, what am I doing now? I'm not competitive surfer anymore. Am I going to chase this being a free surfer route, like, and kind of removing myself from like society, like really, like at the time the movie Into the Wild had just come out.
Oh wow.
It was like crazy, inspiring,
and tragic
obviously, but the concept being, it's like sometimes it takes you to like go away from all of your comforts and family and everything you have at home. And then you kind of get away from that. And like the scene that gets me the most is the one where I'm like, I get connected to that village, and it was really all the kids. Mm-hmm. Like I was running around this rock with all the kids, and they were playing games, and I was like, wow, like it made me miss my family.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and it was like this moment of like, that's kind of the end of the movie is like, and that's where that quote comes into play. It's like, we dream of all these things. Like, I'm going to go surf perfect waves and like do this movie and do all these things. But like, wow, I like everything I had at home was pretty amazing too.
See, when you explain it, then it doesn't sound nearly as compulsive because the quote sounded like that we're endlessly searching or something, that, like you said, shaping that board. What could I do better?
Yeah.
This is like way more kind of wholesome and grounded, that, appreciating what you have.
Yeah.
Like, Dorothy was right. You were home all alone.
Right. But it applies, across the board, right? Yeah. It's like there's another quote that I love too from Jack White, and he says, I'm never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could play this song 10 different ways or record it this many different ways, but I'm never satisfied.
Right.
I always want to keep, like, it's hard to like tell him to stop.
Right.
Like, he's just like the creative juices just keep flowing, right?
Right.
And you're always wondering, well, what if I did this? What if I added this? And sometimes it takes you to do all those things to strip it all the way back and go back to the beginning point where it was just him playing a song on acoustic guitar.
Right.
And being like, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Or when he even makes his own guitar.
Yeah,
It, like,
exactly.
That cigar box thing he did.
It might get loud.
Yeah.
The opening scene to It Might Get Loud. Incredible.
Yeah.
Right? Who says you need to buy a guitar,
You don't need to drop
Like,
$2,000.
right? It's like, dang, like, so cool. So everyday life, it's like it applies.
And then this is like the $1 million question. No, it's a good. It's an easy one. No, it's not monetarily. It's like it's what's burned in your brain. So Ben Ipa said that surfing will create snapshots in your head that'll never leave you. They'll have images that won't leave you for your whole life. So, are there any images in the water that are burned into your brain? Any specific wave, beach, sunset, scene, some moment, the kids playing by the rock? I don't know.
Yeah, totally. No, there's a few wipeouts that like are burned into my.
Funny how many people talk about.
Yeah.
It's the one that beat them, not the one that they beat.
But then there's a couple amazing rides that stick into my head too. So but yeah, I think it's more about the family. Like I had a session a couple summers ago, and I had all my kids and my wife all riding a wave together, like stuff like that. You're like, wow,
there you go.
This is what surfing gave me.
Right on.
That's the ultimate gift.
I think that's where we end. I think that might be like sticking the landing right there.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, man. Boy, we talked about everything from surf to music to whatnot. So big mahalo to Rob Machado for coming out and joining us today and taking some time out of the ocean and the baseball games and everything else you're going to do here, and the family, time from the family.
Sure.
And as always, if you enjoyed this conversation and want to see more, make sure you hit like or subscribe on the bottom of your screen. And in the meantime, mahalo for watching and aloha.